Damon sits in an armchair within the former Burgermeister's office, his flask of whiskey in one hand and a cigarette in the other. He stares straight ahead, deep in thought, going over in his mind about Doru, vampires and Strahd. He stressfully exhales as Irina walks into the room with a bowl of soup.
Donatello is quite an expert in the kitchen.
She smiles, trying to lighten the gloomy mood. I just wish I had access to my library. Maybe I could have found something in there. Damon thinks out loud before finally acknowledging her presence. I'm sorry, thank you. I am in a bit of a rut, I suppose. A world filled with monsters, it's difficult to recall everything I've read. His smirk falls into concern as he takes another drag of his cigarette.
Try not to be too hard on yourself. You help those you can.
Irina puts her hand on Damon's shoulder. He looks up thoughtfully. Does your father's library have anything on vampiric entities?
I'm not sure, but you are welcome to look.
Irina softly smiles. Ismark wanders into the office, rummaging through a small lockbox, and hands the detective a bag of coins. Thank you for your help and sensitivity with my father's funeral. This should suffice. The detective stands and bows slightly. Appreciated, but I would have done the same without payment. He glances at the coins, which have the Ravenloft crest on one side and a scratched-out portrait of Strahd on the other. Damon silently approves. Ains pokes his head into the room upon hearing the clink of coins. Hard work and good pay, it seems. He puts his hand out to Damon with a smile on his face. The detective hands over several coins. I suppose everyone should get their share. Oh yeah, we dealt with the manor. Burned like a roll of parchment. That's one less problem in the world, yeah? The drow softly smiles, but the detective is too over-encumbered with his thoughts to listen and leaves the room mumbling to himself. Aru stares out of the window guarding the front door. She spots a suspicious shrub rustling. Her eyes narrow and her grip tightens around her axe. Damon touches her arm lightly.
Ah! Don't sneak up on me like that. Otherwise you get a face full of metal.
She anxiously yelps. The detective coyly raises an eyebrow and hands over her pay.
What am I supposed to do with this? Not like this place has a blades, bats and beyond.
Despite her words, the orc shoves the coins into her pack. Damon moves into the kitchen, where Donnie is serving up a spiced vegetable soup.
Get it while it's hot,
he calls. The suave rogue gently slides a few coins into the turtle's claw, who automatically licks one.
Nah, man, this will ruin the flavor,
he grimaces.
I'll save them for later.
And drops them into his shell. Blossom is sitting on the counter, wiggling his legs, watching the chef at work. Damon repeats his gesture, a small stack of coins. Ah, Sonny Papa. And proceeds to drop one into the soup while Donnie isn't looking. Lucian is on a balcony overlooking the village of Barovia. He glares longingly at the castle on the horizon. The detective puts some coins on the table next to the half-full bottle of wine. The warlock frowns, taking it as a personal insult. For the job, everyone gets their share. Damon states boldly. Lucian huffs and picks up one of the coins.
Pathetic trinkets. Wealth is for the weak. In my many years, I've seen generations of royals wage wars over it. If only they saw true power, perhaps their kingdoms would still be standing.
He tosses the coin back, ruffling his mustache and using the glass to point out at the castle.
Now, there is a man who knows what he is doing.
He smiles, taking a sip. What? Enacting strife and discontent? Killing your subjects and torturing their spirits? Damon aggressively exclaims.
Well, that's part of it, of course, but really, it is about knowledge. Living beyond your years so you can come to know everything. That is true power.
Lucian pridefully lifts the glass in agreement with himself. Well, with great power comes... Damon gets interrupted.
Fear! Yes, I know.
Lucian flicks his hand dismissively.
Keeping the peasants from revolting. That's the true challenge.
Damon grumbles uncomfortably and returns to the office to look through the library. After a few hours of drifting through books, he eventually comes across Koilan's journals, speaking about the history of Barovia, with several locations across the land. Hagenvast Hold, an abandoned fortress where an ancient order of knights once lived. Vallaki, the largest town in the kingdom, on the banks of Lake Zarovich. Even though people go out on the water with nets, no one catches any fish. The cliffside town of Kresk, home to the Abbey of St. Markovia, and Zerpool, has a Vishtani encampment with a dubious fortune-teller. Damon pulls away from the journal and finally notices Ismark at the table, with a magnifying glass peering over a map by candlelight. How is the plan going? The detective glides over the desk.
I'm just trying to find the safest route and estimating how many days it will take to travel. It's been a while since I went to Vallaki. Hopefully this map is still accurate.
Ismark worryingly rubs his chin.
But it's worth the risk. Better than being a sitting pigeon.
Agreed. Damon raises his eyebrow. Donnie waddles in and begins digging through the pile, flinging books to the side. Donnie, what are you doing? Damon grumbles on the end of his patience.
This place has gotta have spell books, right? That's what libraries are for.
The wizard shakes a random tome as if the magic is going to fall straight out. I have spent many hours here. If there were such items, I would have found one. Now please show some respect for someone else's property. Damon snaps.
Oh, Father banned magical books after Irina used one to get out of doing chores. It did not end well.
Ismark smirks, recalling a childhood memory.
So many worms.
Donnie whimpers and returns to the kitchen, complaining under his breath. The nobleman leans over the desk to make sure the wizard has departed, before turning to Damon.
I do not mean to be rude, but how does one become the charge of such a strange gaggle of...
Ismark stops himself. Insane infants? Damon finishes with a pained smile. I knew if one wishes to find these so-called dark powers, I must break bread with someone already familiar with them. That's how I met Lucian. Damon leans on the desk. I saw the potential of Aru right away. Her strength surpasses us all, and she was dead set on searching literally everywhere for her mother's killers. So she didn't need much persuasion. As for the others, Damon sighs and breaks his speech to internally ask himself why. Ismark nods knowingly.
This village has its troubled folk, but I wouldn't think anyone would willingly come to this cursed kingdom.
Damon gives an amused sigh. I suppose it's my purpose. As darkness settles over the mansion, the party lay down to sleep in the office once again. Ain shiftily opens one of his eyes and carefully creeps to rummage for any valuables, but is interrupted by gentle tapping on the window. He peers past the wooden boards to investigate, and can see a raven sitting on the outer ledge. They make eye contact, and the bird uses its wing to wave at the drow, who in his tired state puzzlingly waves back. The bird nods and knocks against the glass again. The rogue comes to realize the tapping is a form of communication used by thieves. He quickly grabs some parchment and ink from the desk, and scribbles to decipher the code. Avoid Surf Road. Ains looks up at the raven, which nods and flies away. The drow stares at the parchment for a moment, wondering if he is dreaming or going mad, and returns to sleep. Morning arrives and Donnie is already in the kitchen cooking breakfast.
You got egg?
Blossom bluntly asks. Sure. Anything else? Donnie smiles.
Egg,
Blossom states with conviction. After a few minutes he walks into the office with 2 lightly peppered fried eggs and hands it to Blossom, who is clapping and wiggling his legs on a chair. Irina walks in wearing a breastplate with a cloak. Ismark follows, dressed in splintered armor, carrying a bag which he dumps on the floor.
If you need anything, I suggest you bring it with you. It is a long journey to Vallaki.
How long do you believe it will take? Damon inquires.
If we're lucky, 2 days,
Irina adds.
We'd appreciate it if no one notices we are leaving. Can't risk word getting back to Strahd we're on the move.
Ismark urges. Very well, let's get to it. The detective claps his hands at the party. Blossom groans with disapproval halfway through his breakfast. Donnie raids the kitchen for food and finds an old lockbox covered in dust in the pantry. He licks the lid and gets a mouthful of rust.
Irony.
Before pulling it open to find 3 bottles sealed with wax. He taps his claws against the glass and reads the worn labels.
Healing potions.
He eagerly smirks. Finally, the group head out into the village, weaving through the streets to avoid being seen by the wandering villagers. Ains and Donnie stop in their tracks.
What the?
Donnie's jaw drops. How? Ains squeals. The pair look up at the now pristine and intact Durst Manor looming over the street. Ismark and Irina walk straight past unfazed. What is it? Damon asks, scouring the street for threats.
The house. It's back.
Donnie states in confusion.
I did say it was haunted,
Ismark casually mentions.
Come on, we don't have time for this.
Damon pulls on the almost catatonic wizard and the bamboozled drow. Ains trails off as he is dragged down the road. When the party meets the main road, they see that it is littered with puddles, as if it rained the night before, but only on this street. The group sees Morgantha pushing her cart through the mud once again. Donnie flicks his claw and the earth under her feet shifts, becoming flat and dry. The old woman smiles.
Oh, you again,
she calls out.
Your good deeds are endless. Would you like a pastry?
Sure. Do you have salad flavor?
Donnie purrs.
Well, we do have a vegetarian option, but it's not as popular as our meat version.
Morgantha smiles.
I'll take a vegetable.
Donnie nods. As the old woman lifts the tarp, the warm scent drifts into Blossom's nose.
Blossom want meat.
The small orc is pulled towards the aroma.
Certainly.
The wrinkled lady passes over the packages.
Here go.
Blossom offers over a gold coin and embraces the package, feeling its warmth through the paper.
So generous.
Morgantha winks.
I'm not carrying you again.
Aru groans uncomfortably.
Blossom's there for bedtime.
He puts the pastry into his cloak. Ismark leads the group out of town, a map within his arms. Just as they cross the bridge, there is a rustling within the underbrush. Blossom stands with his quarterstaff ready next to Irina as 3 figures dressed in assorted furs with mud smeared over their skins step out onto the road. They glare intensely at the party. Ismark's eyes grow wide and he slowly steps behind Damon. The forest figures stand trying to determine the group's collective strength. Damon does the same back. From their attire and demeanour, he infers they are some kind of hunters.
Morning,
the detective wearily announces before whispering to the group. Be on guard. Remember to target the same one.
I'm ready to target all of them.
Aru grumbles in a low voice, twisting her grip on her axe. Ains effortlessly slips behind one of the trees unnoticed.
Travelers, you should be careful on the road. Very dangerous.
The bearded hunter grins with wild eyes.
You know, if you were to lose weight, it would make a journey much easier.
Donnie growls.
Is that a fat joke?
Just suggestion, friend. We forest folk happy to take any unnecessary items.
The detective quickly loads his crossbow, shielded behind Aru, and directs Ains with his eyes to get behind them. The hunters stare deep into Blossom's sparkly blue eyes.
You got excess coin, little one?
Blossom, with his best performance, sighs sadly.
Oh, nothing. Spoon. All Blossom have.
He whines as if he is on the edge of tears. The hunters glance briefly at each other, believing the pink one's poor me routine. They turn their attention to Donnie.
You got any food?
Oh, the fat one's hoarding food. Is that it?
He groans, searching his shell.
We got this from Strahd himself.
The wizard gestures with the wine bottle and rolls it towards them.
Oh, fancy. Worth a bit of gold.
The hunter tosses the bottle in his hands and looks at his comrades, who nod in agreement.
Okay, fair travels then.
and they turn towards the forest. Tell me, for our show of good faith, what else lurks in these woods, aside from the forest folk? Damon puts away his crossbow.
Well, you got your wolves, your werewolves, your dire wolves, dire bear, few undead here and there.
The hunter strokes his beard. You can obviously handle yourselves. Guide us through a short while and I'm sure we can find something to reward you with. Damon steps forward cautiously.
Cough up some gold, drink or food. We take you to their pool camp.
The hunter squints in contemplation.
You see Madame Eva, yes? Most foreigner do.
Damon, not wanting to cause potential conflict, nods in agreement. Ains emerges from a bush, and the fur-clad brutes stand perfectly still as if they were expecting his approach. All right, lads. He drops a few coins into the leader's hands.
This good. Nashi družbi. I am Nicholas. You follow me.
The bearded man stomps off down the track. While making their way through the woodland path, Blossom can see what looks like a furry rock. As it shifts its weight, he sees that it is in fact an enormous bear tearing into a fresh corpse. He whispers to the party,
Big bear, big rah.
and points down the road. Damon and Ains ready their weapons. Donnie, mindlessly humming to himself, steps on a branch, and with a loud crack, the dire bear whips its head toward the turtle. It snarls with blood-soaked teeth.